I remember standing on the subway platform with my mother. I couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and I was a very small little boy holding her hand. And I remember being nose to nose with that silver cross, asking myself, who is this twisted silver man on this little tiny silver cross? I thought Christians were idiots. They were dumb, dull idiots. I didn't know any, but I'd seen them on television and in the movies. So I knew what they were like. Growing up to the sound of the bells of the Catholic Church waking me up every single morning in my life, those, tough Catholic kids marching out of the parochial school in their uniforms. And I actually thought it was the Christians who killed the Jews in the Holocaust. The Nazis were, I thought the Nazis were some kind of Christian that went on with the business that had been going on for centuries of killing Jews, and they were doing it just more effectively. When I visited Dachau outside of Munich, when I saw the concentration camp and some of the films that they kept and how it was presented, I began really to ask myself in a serious way, for the first time ever perhaps, the debt, how I could just charge the debt that I had as a Jew to those that had suffered so greatly on behalf of that identity, and what it had to do with me. And it was at that point, oddly enough, asking myself what it meant to be a Jew, that this whole other aspect of religious claim came into my life as a result of a robbery that took place in the hostel that I was staying at, where I was robbed while I was sleeping. Now, being without money or identification of any kind, I made the decision to test God, if you will. Say, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to wire home for money. I had this vision of all these little pieces of paper that were in my wallet flying away into the sky and leaving me behind as a child of the universe, a naked child without an identity in the universe, ready to start again, utterly dependent on whatever it was that life brought me. And if there were a God out there and God wanted to look down and show mercy on me, he was certainly welcome to. Which is actually exactly what happened. I met a young woman who befriended me. She was a committed Christian believer who was very interested in my Jewish background. And as we got to know each other, she began to unfold the story of a Jewish Messiah to me in a way that I had never imagined existed. I mean, we knew Jesus was Jewish, but beyond that, I just figured Christianity popped out of nowhere. She very gently began to describe the gospel to me, for some reason, as I never had been before. I was willing to listen to the story. When I was robbed in the youth hostel, I told her something about what had happened to me. She offered to buy me lunch, and suddenly my view of God began to perk up, because I thought, this is like an answer to my prayers. This is what I've been waiting. This is what I've been waiting for. Well, when I ask myself how it was that I became receptive to a message that had just been antithetical to me throughout the course of my whole life, growing up as I did, understanding, even though it wasn't even said out loud, but that Jesus was not for us. Jesus was not for Jewish kids, not for Jewish people, and his followers were not to be trusted. I was challenged because I didn't know that anything like this could ever exist, but there was something so compelling about what she represented. And it wasn't as though she was calling attention to it either. It was just something that naturally flowed from her being that I have to say, I found it very compelling, and it made me want to know more. Reading the New Testament was a revelation to me, because I thought it was a Christian book. That was written by Christians for Christians, had nothing whatsoever to do with Jewish life or Jewish faith. And as I began to read the New Testament, I'm reading all of this scripture from the Hebrew Bible that is in the Gospels, and reading about a Jewish Jesus talking to Jewish people about the prophecies and promises of the Hebrew scripture in the land of promise. And I wound up asking myself, all right, what isn't Jewish about this? And why didn't somebody tell me before? But over the course of about 6 or 7 weeks, as I read the Bible and prayed, learned for the first time in, I don't know, ever really, because something had happened to me in Paris that I couldn't deny. But at the same time, I was terrified. I didn't know how to respond or what to do. I was very frightened that I was going to give myself in a way that I wasn't prepared to do. And I was so intent upon preserving my own freedom and autonomy that it felt as if I was going to, if I believed in God, I was going to betray myself. There was a great contrast between the vivid image that I still retained after all of these years of the crucifix and the silver twisted, lifeless, inert body on that crucifix that I had seen at the hip of that Roman Catholic sister, and the vivid, vibrant, life-giving Messiah that I now began to encounter through the scriptures and in my prayers and in my relationships with other people, and how it was that I was being reshaped in a way that was new. And one of the main ways that was taking place was in the qualities of the relationships that I was having, not only with other believers, but how my attitude was changing toward other people. I distinguish faith and belief. Faith and belief are not the same thing. I think Jewish people have to give themselves permission to believe in order that they may have faith. Walking with God, as I have begun to learn to do, is an extraordinarily enriching, multifaceted way of living. It was through his suffering that he reached me.